ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 9 of the Wing Magma podcast, where we talk about all things Wing Magma and I walk through the Wednesday Wang playlist that I'm curating over on Spotify. If you've been enjoying the series of podcasts so far, please help me out and give me a like and a subscribe and a share and a follow or whatever. You can follow me at Wing Magma on YouTube, at Wing Magma on Instagram, at Wing Magma on TikTok. I've not been doing a great deal on TikTok, but I am over there. And you can follow the Wednesday Wang playlist on Spotify. You can also find the podcast on Spotify and all other major podcasting platforms if you search for the Wing Magma podcast. So as of last week, I started a new format for the podcast. So if you've been watching on YouTube or if you've been following the normal podcast, that is still in existence and I'm still putting things out as per the norm. But I've also started to trial the new kind of radio format, which I really enjoy, and I've had a pretty decent response to that. So I'd like to continue in that vein. And so instead of me walking through the playlist, the Wednesday Wang playlist track by track, I'm just going to kind of intersperse the tracks throughout the podcast. So hopefully I only have to explain myself once when I do that. But if you're viewing it on YouTube, or if you're viewing it, or if you're listening to it as the normal podcast and I talk about a track and then you don't hear the track, that's why. If you experience it as the radio format thing, all will make sense. So on that note, I'm going to kick things off with the first track of the playlist, as I always do, which is Memory Holes by Wing Magma. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed that. So like last week's podcast, in terms of how well that was received, it was kind of off the chart. Like, to kind of put it into context, right? So just on the YouTube views alone, like I think at the point that I'm recording this now, I'm at about 230, 240 views, which I know, like in the whole grand scheme of YouTube, that's kind of nothing. However, in my terms, like some of my podcasts have only been getting like 30, 40 views, which I think is, I'm cool with. You know, I'm not doing this to get the views. I'm doing this because this is something that I want to do, something I'm interested in, and I enjoy the process of making a podcast. But to have something that's 4, 5, 6 times as popular as some of my best ranking outputs, like really, really cool. So the response to last week's episode was overwhelming, and I hope that I get some stragglers that stick around. I don't imagine I'm going to get that kind of response every single week. I think Neil is an intriguing character for anybody that was around the Leicester music scene. He was involved in some great bands, and I hope he won't mind me saying so, but he's a kind of a divisive personality. He speaks his mind, speaks how he says what he thinks and how he feels, and he's very true to his word, and sometimes he upsets people in that process. So I imagine there's a lot of people that were tuning in just to see if they got called out, I guess. I don't know, but like, I really enjoyed that conversation. I really enjoyed that podcast, and it's been great just talking to Neil over the past couple of months. It's been really nice having that channel of comms with him. And that first episode, I think the conversation, it was very natural. You know, I mean, I knew what I wanted to ask him as a Tie-Dye and Minars fan, but I didn't. It was clearly unscripted. Now, I think the first episode, the one that I kicked out last week, it worked for that, you know, being unscripted and it just kind of finding its own way. I've tried to edit the subsequent episodes, and it's proving to be very, very tricky, because we were drinking, we were talking, and I don't think either of us were really cognizant of how it was going to be received. It was very much like a conversation between two friends, and as I'm sure everyone can be sympathetic to, a conversation between two friends is very different from a conversation that other people get to listen to. So as our conversation goes on, we lose our way a lot. I certainly lose my way because I'd been drinking, and it becomes choppy more, and it becomes difficult to kind of find that central thread. But equally, I think Neil probably said some things to me that he didn't want said to a lot of people. So I did share with him what I was going to kick out as episode 2 of that. And we kind of both agreed that that's probably not appropriate to share. And I'm sure there'll be people that will think, oh God, let me have a listen. But like, it's just not, it's not that type of conversation. So the plan is that Neil and I are going to have another chat and make it a bit more coherent, a lot more coherent, because I only went through another hour's worth of stuff and I already start to fumble my words. And there was still 3 or 4 hours to go after that. I have no idea what we were talking about for so long. And I imagine it gets significantly worse the further on we go. So I'm going to record another conversation with Neil where we talk about the kind of nuts and bolts of tie-dye. I think episode 1 was more the lead up to tie-dye and kind of how it was formed, or how they were formed. Then we can talk about, you know, their career, and I wanted to ask more about their songs, their shows, you know, and things like that, which I didn't get to ask. So I'd like to have that conversation again. And then the transition from tie-dye to Minars, and then everything that kind of happened there. So looking forward to having that conversation. And I'm also looking forward to having the conversation where we talk about his playlist that he put together. So Neil sent me at least 20 track playlist, which was so much fun to listen to. So I'm looking forward to having that opportunity. I think that is an episode in itself, especially when considering the new format where we play songs, talk about the songs, play songs, talk about the songs. So there's at least another couple of episodes coming up, but apologies if people tune in this week expecting to see part 2 of that conversation. It's not going to happen, I'm afraid. Not just yet, anyway. But as we were kind of putting that episode out around the same kind of time, Minars have released kind of like a forgotten tracks EP sort of thing, like things that kind of didn't make any of their other outputs. They've got like this 6-track thing called About Hypotheticals. Some really great tracks on there. One in particular is called I Love New York City, but it's no place for a beautiful horse. Now I remember that track coming out, and like they put it out quite a few years ago. It was towards the end of Minars, and it could have actually, thinking about it, it's probably beyond Minars, but they've released it as a Minars kind of track, as their swan song, and it's such a good song. For those who haven't heard it, it's track number 2 on the playlist. So let's cut to that now. So this is I Love New York City, but it's no place for a beautiful horse. Cool, hope you guys enjoyed that. So what have I been up to? So like I say, most of the past week has all been about last week's episode and stuff like that, and just the kind of overwhelming response to that. On my immediate radar, I have my first rehearsal with any band like for a very long time. coming up this week. So I've let you guys know that my band, or our band Bronze Age, is getting back together. So we have our first rehearsal with our new drummer on Friday. I cannot tell you, I can't tell you how excited I am about that. A, just to be playing music again. B, to be playing Bronze Age music again. C, a new dynamic, a new kind of chemical cocktail of human beings making music. If our meeting a few weeks ago is anything to go by, it's going to be a lot of fun. And apologies, I know I've spoken about this before, but it's on my mind a lot, talking about or thinking about Bronze Age and how that's going to come to pass. So I've, like, most of my downtime playing music has been trying to reprogram my brain to be able to play these songs and sing at the same time, so that hopefully we can get some stuff done when we come to rehearse. And they're not easy guitar tracks to play, and then obviously you've got the kind of muscle memory relearning there, and then also being able to sing over the top. So I've been doing like a little bit each day, like kind of like training in a way, kind of trying to relearn those tracks. So yeah, that's been the majority of my time these past couple of weeks. So on that note, I'm going to play a Bronze Age track, which I think, looking at the stats, it's the 4th track on the EP. So people's attention clearly kind of switch off, because this track hasn't had quite as many plays. So hopefully if I put it on the podcast, a few more people will listen to it. This track is called Ghana. It was the last track that we wrote. The tracks on the EP appear in chronological order. That was the order that we wrote the songs in. So this was the last song that we wrote as Bronze Age. Check it out. Like, there's some great moments in here that I'm really happy and proud of, and I'm really looking forward to getting to play again. So this next track is Ghana by Bronze Age. Cool, hope you guys enjoyed that. So in other more local Leicester-y kind of based news, hopefully there's people in this kind of network of Wing Magma viewers that have been watching and following the Robot Needs Home series. So I think there's 10 videos in total, or 10 gigs basically, where 10 artists from Leicester have played in 10 different quirky kind of venues, and each Friday for the last few months a new show has been put out. And so I've watched 3 of those. I'm not going to claim to have watched all of them, and my experiences with them were really, it was just loads of fun. And it did, like, in many ways it did feel like I was watching a show, like I was attending a gig, although I was in my living room having a beer watching the show. But it did have that kind of shared experience kind of vibe, trying to catch those videos live. But even watching them, post event, really enjoyed it. So props to those guys who put that series together. It was a really valuable thing to do, to keep the scene going whilst there is no physical kind of scene. So I've watched a couple of these this week. So I think I mentioned that I watched Rich List play at the Space Centre, but I've watched a couple this week, and I'd like them to be included in the playlist for this week. So the first one that I'd like to include is CJ Pandit. Now, like, I found out about CJ Pandit around this time last year when I started Wing Magma, and I started doing research into who's about in Leicester and stuff like that, because like I'm that out of touch with the Leicester music scene. I have no idea who is who anymore. It's been a while since I had my finger on that pulse. And I'm not entirely sure how I found out about CJ Pandit. I think he was just somebody that cropped up, and then I've realised he was from Leicester. I've sent a few messages to him and I've spoke about his music and stuff like that, and he seems like a really decent guy. I think he's very popular. He's clearly got his head screwed on in terms of promo and his kind of media campaign. And I've enjoyed, like, so the first interaction I had with him was actually like a live thing that he did on Instagram. I just tuned in to, this was right in the thick of lockdown 1, and I was just watching on my phone, like, just, it was like a direct link into his home, and he played a few of his tracks on his own directly to his phone, broadcasting over Instagram. And that was a relatively new format for me to explore and to experience. So I messaged him a few times off of that. He's recently released an EP called Before You Disappear, or Before I Disappear. I'm going to say Before You Disappear. It's one or the other. So yeah, and then I saw his home episode, or you know, the gig that he put on or that was recorded, and it was in Seamus Wong's studio, which Seamus Wong has come up a few times in previous episodes of the podcast. It's kind of a bit of a spiritual home to a lot of kind of Leicester artists. I'm lucky enough to have recorded there. I hope I get the opportunity to record there again. Such a great studio, and he performed with like a piano player or a keyboard player, and it's a really intimate show in a very important place. So it was a really decent gig, and his kind of vulnerability comes through, his songwriting really comes through in a way that is more immediate in that kind of setting than his EP. His EP is very produced, it's a pop EP, you know, it's, and I don't mean to kind of disrespect or diminish anything by that. It's fantastic. The production is incredible. But when that's stripped back into a vocal performance and a piano, the songs have nowhere else to hide, and they are fantastic songs, and he's a fantastic singer. But it's just like, where's this guy come from? Like, perhaps like because I've not been around the Leicester music scene, perhaps I'm the last to know, but it seems that he's kind of crept out of nowhere, and like he's extremely popular. Now I actually asked him if I could interview him as part of the Wing Magma podcast. He's turned me down. Hopefully I'll get to talk to him at some point in the future. I don't know if he was just being polite. He kind of said that he's done a lot of promo recently, and he's done with that, but wants to speak in the future. I don't blame him. I've got a modest audience, but I'm intrigued by the guy, and I'd like to know more about him. What his background is, what his story is. So I'm not going to give up. I would like to talk to him, and I would like to share that kind of knowledge with you guys. So this next track is New York Time by CJ Pandit. Have a listen. Let me know your thoughts. Okay, cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. On the back of watching the CJ Pandit home gig, I started to flick through some of the other gigs that were there, and there was one by a band called Dusker. I know nothing about Dusker whatsoever. So I was looking for a band. You know, there was lots of kind of artists and stuff like that. You know, like Grace Petrie did one of these things, and like I was looking for another Leicester band. And so I thought, right, I'll check out Dusker. I really enjoyed Dusker. They look like they look relatively young. They're just kind of, I think they've got 3 guitar players, a bass player, drummer. They don't look like they're in the same band. Like if you take each of those guys individually, they all look like they're from different walks of life, let alone different bands. And they've all been chucked together. And I really enjoyed what they do. It's kind of very progressive. There's elements of kind of math in there. It reminds me of what was going on in the Leicester scene when I was a part of the Leicester scene years ago. So it's nice to know that it hasn't completely evolved into something that I don't recognize anymore. It was really decent. I think like the gig was at the Pork Pie Library. So these gigs are in like very weird settings. They're not like at the Firebug or something like that. But yeah, Dusker. So the track that I'm going to put out on the playlist is the first track from EP1. They've got 2 EPs out on Spotify. I do suggest you check them both out. But the track that I'm going to put on is called The Maker. Yes, it's called The Maker. Have a listen. Let me know your thoughts. All right, cool. So a new section that I'd like to add to the podcast is recommendations. So I put a message out on Instagram and I asked people to recommend something for me to listen to. Didn't know what type of response I was going to get, but I did have a response. So I'm really chuffed that I've got like 2 people kind of got in touch and asked me to listen to certain things. Which I have. So the first person that got in touch was ex-lover Dan Faulkner. So he played bass in Minars, and he's currently he's got his new project called Ex-Lover. Strongly suggest you guys check that out because he had an EP out last year around the same kind of time as I put out Memory Holes, and we were talking a lot around that time. And he suggested a band called, I want to say Qualski, Qwolski. I hadn't heard of this band, but he said that they've got a new EP coming out or a new album coming out later this year. They actually have a new track that came out on the day of me recording this. So it's kind of post-punk, lo-fi. So one of the tracks that I heard, and I couldn't because I listened to pretty much everything that I could get my hands on after I got the recommendation. They do remind me of Joy Division, and there was a track in particular that reminded me of Transmission by Joy Division. But the track that I am going to recommend is the track that came out today. And that is called Folk Song. It's their new single, Qualski. Have a go. Let me know. Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So the next recommendation that I got was from a chap called Martin, I'm going to say Brian. I'm assuming he's from the Leicester music scene. Because he got in touch and said that he'd like me to listen. He'd like to know what I think of his band called We Faith, and then he sent me a message saying, if you want context, the drummer and guitarist (brackets me) were in the eternally uncool Leicester bands Auto Hype and I Am in Love. Now I remember I Am in Love. Swear that I saw them play at the Firebug. And I think Jamie Ward had something to do with them. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure that I am. so gave those guys, like, I listened to the album that they've got, We Faith by We Faith. You can check it out on Spotify. I didn't know what to expect, so I just kind of put it on. I was doing washing up, it was Sunday, and I listened to it for the first time, and there are synthwave vibes to this album, but there are no synthesizers, right? So I'm not describing it as a synthwave album, but I get similar kind of feels as I tend to get from listening to synthwave music. It's got that kind of 80s late night car journey kind of feel to it, but like I say, there's no synths involved, so it's not a synthwave by any stretch. It's very progressive. There's huge reverb on everything, which is probably why it makes me feel like it's an 80s kind of thing. Some of the guitar lines have got that kind of delay, reverb kind of. I feel lazy if I say Tears for Fears, because I know that I've had Tears for Fears on the podcast recently, but like there are some melody lines that just, like, if you take the synths out of Tears for Fears, this is what they sound like. I really enjoyed it. I've listened to it twice. I listened to it on the Sunday, and then I've listened to it traveling to and from work today, as I was driving. And the first time round, I remember thinking, this is on the cusp of, it could go either way. And if I was to watch this being performed, and those guys kind of played as a shoegazer kind of band, I don't think this would work. There is potential for this to be very, very passionate, very, very emotive, but it depends what you picture in your head. I don't know these guys. I can't visualize it, but I feel like it could go either way. So as long I can buy into this, assuming that the passion is there. And then the second time I listened to it, the passion is definitely there. There are kind of more subtle tracks, but there are some very kind of energetic, passion driven tracks to it too. I feel like I'm wobbling on now. Have a listen to We Faith. Let me know what you think. I really like this. I'd like to see them live, just to kind of put the context there either way. And I just hope that they are the passionate side of the coin rather than the kind of mellow side. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. Okay, cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. So there's another new section of the podcast that I would like to explore, and I'm calling it Future Ideas. So there are a few tracks that I've found and that kind of articulate where I would like to take the Wing Magma project, because what Wing Magma has been up to now, it's been some sort of vehicle, or at least I thought it was going to be a vehicle for songs that I couldn't fit into any particular band that I was in. So it was kind of my scrap pile. I really enjoy Memory Holes as a track, and I'm glad that it's found a place in the universe. But I don't think that is going to define what Wing Magma is or what Wing Magma sounds like. I'd like Wing Magma to be its own thing rather than just a scrap heap for things that didn't make it into whatever band that I was in. And I don't want to kind of go through my back catalogue of unused ideas and put it there. I think some of my unused ideas are unused for a reason. They didn't work or didn't make the grade or whatever. And now that Bronze Age is going again, and I imagine that a lot of things that I write will be Bronze Age specific, I feel like I've got that bit covered. I would like to do something completely different for Wing Magma, and I would like that to occupy something that I don't foresee Bronze Age occupying. and there's a certain genre that I don't really know what you would call it, that kind of, for whatever reason, really flicks a switch in my head. And there are a few bands that kind of really personify that. And it's kind of like this dreamy, psychedelic indie genre. And again, I don't know what that means or what it's. I'm sure there is a label for all of that, but I don't know. And every now and then I find tracks that I think, that's what I'm talking about, that's what I'm talking about, that's what I mean. And I found a bunch of them recently that I want to kind of have my own little section within this playlist that are going to help me navigate where I want to take the Wing Magma project. So the first track on this section of the playlist is by The Drums, and it's called I'll Fight for Your Life. Now, I don't really know much about The Drums. I remember they had like a big hit and it was annoying as hell, and I think I just switched off from The Drums. But this track is like, that's what I'm talking about. I can see me doing something like that. Simple, melodic, but kind of cinematic in a way. Have a listen. Like I say, I hope it kind of starts to illustrate where I'd like to go. So on the back of that track, a band that I don't really know anything about, but there's a song that I've heard over the last week which again has kind of cropped up and made me think, okay, I'm starting to see where I could take this. A band called Rolling Blackouts Coastal Forever, and the song is called French Press. Now, it's not the same as, or it's different from the track that I've just played from The Drums, but like, hopefully you can start to get a picture as to where I'm hoping to take Wing Magma, if I can do that kind of thing on my own. So yeah, so Rolling Blackouts Coastal Forever, French Press. Cool. And then the final track is a track that's kind of popped up a lot over the years in terms of just creeps in and out of my kind of listening habits, and that's Incinerate by Sonic Youth. Now there's just something about this track, I don't really know how to describe how it kind of works for me, but there's just something about this melody, something about the optimism about it without it sounding particularly cheesy. I know when you say like this music sounds optimistic, it's, if somebody describes something to me as optimistic, I think I would cringe. So, but hopefully, like, if you hear it, you'll know what I mean. And I just really dig this track, and there's a melody, there's a feeling that this track encapsulates that I am hoping to kind of nail down as a direction for Wing Magma. So have a listen. Let me know your thoughts. Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and hopefully you understand where I'm coming from, and hopefully I can start to put some music together that stands in that kind of vein. So the last, well, not the very last section, but the penultimate section for the podcast is in rotation. So this is just stuff that has just come up that I've been listening to, not through any research or anything like that. It's just kind of come up in playlists and stuff that I've really enjoyed. So the first track in that is Gender Roles, Gills. Very grungy. I remember seeing those guys play at Handmade, really enjoyed them. similar in a similar vein to Tiger Cub. I think Tiger Cub are a bit heavier, and I probably prefer Tiger Cub, but Gender Roles are still pretty decent. And this song is called Gills by Gender Roles. So the next track in rotation is by The Kills, and it's called Last Day of Magic. So again, this kind of, on Spotify they have certain kind of playlists, and you kind of like they're labeled like 1 to 6, and this was on one of my playlists that came up. And I remember listening to The Kills a while ago. I can't remember when it was, and they kind of creep back in and out in terms of my listening habits, and this track was a bit of a reminder as to why I enjoy them so much. So give it a go, let me know what you think. Cool. So final track in rotation is En Bloc by Laundromat. So like any kind of long-term listeners to the podcast know that I'm a huge Tobias Hayes fan. Whatever he's kind of writing, I'm usually into. He released the Red EP a few weeks ago, and this is one of the tracks from that EP. There's just like the production on this is just so good. Like there's just such a warm kind of creative vibe to what he does, and his songs are just riddled with hooks. So really palatable, experimental, expressive music. Like it's just fantastic. Like En Bloc, Laundromat. Cool. And then the final track on the playlist, so this is another new section called New Finds. So if there is a band that's kind of new to me, I want to put in this section. I guess I could put Rolling Blackouts, Coastal Forever in there, because I don't know who they are and I couldn't tell you anything about them. But there is a band that I've listened to quite a bit this week called Pottery. They remind me a lot of Television, and kind of, again, that post-punk art rocky kind of stuff, but it's really melodic, really tight, really energetic, a bit like Omni, who I've spoken about before. I don't know much about them, but other than like this album came out last year, Welcome to Bobby's Motel, and the track is called Hot Heater. There's just kind of these late 70s kind of art rock. I keep saying art rock, but I can't think of the kind of, who's the band that I'm thinking of? Brian Ferry, Roxy Music kind of stuff. I really enjoy it. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. Cool, so that concludes the Wednesday Wang playlist, which will be going live Wednesday the 19th. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm hoping to get the conversation with Neil sorted for next week, but I'll keep you posted. And for anybody that kind of tuned in and then tuned out because it wasn't Neil's, obviously you've not made it this far into the podcast, but I apologize. I'll try and make it clear as to when that conversation is going to be. If it's not this week, it'll be soon. Like, come and find me on YouTube at Wing Magma. So yeah, so Instagram at Wing Magma. Thank you very much for participating this week. If you are a fan of this type of thing, please search for the Wing Magma podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, and all major podcasting platforms. And just like say, like the thing that I had such a great response last week to the podcast, it would be fantastic if some of that would turn into a few more kind of longer term fans, so, or viewers, listeners, whatever. Thank you very much for joining me this week. Looking forward to next week, and I shall see you soon. Take care.